Winston is dead.
Welcome to WatchMojo UK, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 things that would happen if the Prime Minister died. For this list, we're looking at everything that would happen if the PM died in office in roughly chronological order, and we're talking about the PM in general, not specifically the current one. Number 10. Close calls. Many times in history, PMs have come close to dying while in office, even throughout the 20th century. Churchill was one of the oldest prime ministers we've ever had at the time of his final retirement in 1955, resigning from the top office at the age of 80. He'd already had numerous strokes and, after a particularly severe one in 53, planning for his funeral began.
Winston is dead.
He survived his political career, however, but numerous other prime ministers following him, including his successors Anthony Eden and Harold Macmillan, also resigned because of health problems.
But I'm afraid the doctors were of one voice, one mind. The time has come to put my health above the country.
And even Boris Johnson found himself hospitalized due to COVID-19 not long after winning a general election.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson is tonight in intensive care at St Thomas's Hospital in London, suffering from the effects of coronavirus.
Number 9. Precedent.
How worried should people be about his health and about who's in charge of the government?
Well, the government's business will continue.
But after hundreds of years of our parliamentary democracy, it surely must have happened before. Yes, it's happened 7 times before, in fact, but not since the time of Queen Victoria. The last PM to die while in office was Henry Temple, Viscount Palmerston, in 1865, who passed at the age of 80 following a short illness.
The Prime Minister is now suffering seriously from a disease that does not pick and choose. Downing Street itself, a place where the virus spread.
However, while 6 of those deceased men died of natural causes, one of them, Spencer Perceval, was actually assassinated. To date, the only British Prime Minister to have ever been. Shockingly, he was shot inside the House of Commons in 1812 by a man named John Bellingham who hated the government.
During the course of this afternoon, the Prime Minister's condition worsened, and on the advice of the medical team, he was moved in to a critical care unit.
Number 8. Upheaval. Immediately following the death of the country's most senior politician, there would undoubtedly be civil unrest, but it's not likely there would be an awful lot. If the PM was assassinated like Perceval, then yes, people would be outraged. But if the PM had been clearly ill for a long time, then people would be sad but not shocked or surprised.
At the Queen's direction, his body had been lying in state for 3 days. Over 300,000 people passed the catafalque at Westminster Hall.
It certainly wouldn't cause an outpouring of public grief in the same way the death of a member of the royal family would, unless the PM in question was particularly popular. Unless we get another Winston Churchill, which isn't likely, the public response will probably be rather muted.
He was remarkable. There'll always be in England, but I don't think there'll ever be another Churchill.
Number 7. Celebration. But Britain is a polarised country even at the best of times. So for everybody who liked the PM, you'll get quite a lot of people who really didn't.
Goldthorpe has never forgotten, never forgiven. A former pit village where the mining spirit endures, celebrating the demise of the woman they believe destroyed their community.
Tasteless as you may think it is, even a PM dying in office might earn some celebration from the British public. Our most divisive Prime Minister of all, Margaret Thatcher, may have won numerous landslide elections in the 1980s, and some polls even put her as more popular than Churchill.
We're having a party, no Thatcher's done! We're having a party, no Thatcher's done!
Can I just ask, is it the right time to have a party, really?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But did that mean the people most hit by her policies didn't throw parties to celebrate her death in 2013? Absolutely not. And notoriously, the song Ding Dong the Witch is Dead shot to number 2 on the charts the same week. Number 6, we'd get a new PM.
I have just accepted the invitation of Her Majesty the Queen to form a government. This will be a new government with new priorities.
Prime Ministers have resigned many times over the years, so this part of the protocol would be familiar at least. Immediately after the loss of a PM, either through death or resignation, the duty falls to the monarch to appoint an appropriate successor.
As to who should succeed me, the sovereign, you have the prerogative to consult. But there's only one man, in my opinion, the Earl of Hume.
The Queen is not allowed to show any opinion on party politics in public, so the choice for the replacements would be the most likely candidates: the Deputy PM, Chancellor of the Exchequer, or somebody else who can command Parliament.
In case you hadn't noticed, your wife has just appointed a close family chum as Prime Minister on the advice of a man who had no right to give that advice since he was no longer in office.
Since the PM's death would be so sudden, there wouldn't be time to immediately hold an election. Number 5. Funeral. The funeral for the PM would follow in a matter of days, organised by the House of Commons and whoever the Queen appoints leader. The scale of the funeral would really depend, though it's highly unlikely it would be a state funeral. The last state funeral in the UK was the funeral of Churchill, and though he isn't the only Prime Minister to have been given that honour, Henry Temple was as well, and the Duke of Wellington, we just haven't had a politician with the calibre of Churchill since.
The great crowd watched in silence, a silence not of grief, but of respect.
Even senior royals who have died since King George VI, including the Duke of Edinburgh and the Queen Mother, didn't get state funerals. Number 4. Party election. Quick to follow the funeral would be an election within the ruling party to properly elect a new leader.
I have just chaired a meeting of the Cabinet where we agreed that the government should call a general election to be held on the 8th of June.
Since the 1960s, Conservative MPs have been able to vote for their leaders during elections, though party members who are not MPs cannot vote. The Labour Party, on the other hand, allows its entire membership base to vote in its leadership elections.
That the process for electing a new leader should begin in the following week.
Regardless of the party with majority rule, an election within the party would happen to elect a replacement. In the cases of resignations, like when Theresa May resigned, she waited until the election was over to actually quit. However, in the case of death, this wouldn't happen.
So I am today announcing that I will resign as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party on Friday the 7th of June, so that a successor can be chosen.
Number 3. General election.
A very good evening. For the 4th time in the space of 5 years, the future of the United Kingdom is uncertain.
The British public, however, is not keen on having prime ministers who haven't been democratically elected by the people, which is why PMs who have only won the leadership of their party will call snap elections not long after taking office.
I showed you the Conservatives falling short, and Labour.
Boris Johnson called his election in December 2019, 7 months after winning the leadership election, and he gained the Tories a majority in Parliament. Theresa May also called a snap election when she replaced David Cameron, though that time it resulted in a hung parliament. Any new PM will want to ensure they have the democratic support of the people, and a snap election will be called within the next few months.
Our exit poll is suggesting that there will be a Conservative majority when all the votes are counted.
Number 2. Documentaries. When His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, passed in 2021, British media was full to bursting with documentaries about his life and times. The coverage was so absolute that people even complained to Ofcom about it in massive numbers. If a Prime Minister were to die in public office, you can safely bet that myriad documentaries and in memoriam segments would begin to air across TV and radio about their career and life.
We leave you now with a blend of memorable images from the life of Prince Philip.
We'd be speculating non-stop about the public response, the legacies they'd leave, how their successor would do, and so on. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Number 1. Statue. Eventually, we'd likely have to build a statue. Many former prime ministers have been given statues to honour them, including Churchill's famous statue in Parliament Square. There are statues of other 20th century politicians as well, including Wilson, Thatcher, and Clement Attlee. the Labour PM who established the NHS. And there are also statues and memorials to other statesmen inside the House of Parliament, and even a bust of Spencer Perceval in Westminster Abbey. There will be some sort of memorial and eventually a statue erected for the PM who died while in office, because people would view them as having sacrificed everything for the country.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo UK and subscribe for more great content.